So happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody who has logged in already. I am Erin. That is my real name, not made up just for St. Patrick's Day. But this is a really special day because we've got a great presenter, Nathan Bonds, and we've got a really terrific topic, which is about how your company can go lean and green, right? So just a quick reminder for those of you who, haven't used Zoom in at least 40 seconds, you know where your Zoom control bar is. We do have people muted right now. We are recording this in case there's some folks who are out enjoying the pleasures of St. Patrick's Day and couldn't make it with us. And chat is how you can share a little bit of your own blarney, ask a little bit of questions of our expert trainer, or get some help with some troubleshooting. So just toss that into chat and we're there. For those of you who haven't yet worked with Polaris MEP, or for those of you who have worked with us but may not know the full breadth of what we do, I did want to take a moment and introduce our center. So we are a team of manufacturing experts. Our entire mission is to help small and medium-sized manufacturers. We help you improve, we help you grow, we help you improve your profitability, right? And we are a nonprofit. We leverage resources both within and without Rhode Island to kind of go through. And so, of course, we get to leverage one of the resources that we have internally, which is Nathan Bonds, our project manager and Lean Six Sigma Black Belt. And, Nathan's background, many of you have known him for his work here with Polaris MEP and in Rhode Island, but it's really been 20 years of experience where he's both championed quality and continuous improvement, focusing on how to reduce those wastes, the many wastes to make them go through. And that could be from a plant scrap coordinator to helping us understand how our mailboxes reduce waste as well. So with that, I'm going to mute myself. Do holler if you need anything. And Nathan, we're so excited to hear your insights. Take it away.
Erin, thank you so much. And I'm honored to be with all of you today. As Erin mentioned, it is St. Patrick's Day. I have a niece who was born on St. Patty's Day. And if you think about it, last night, the luck of the Irish happened again with an 11 seed Notre Dame who didn't go into just overtime, but double overtime and beating Rutgers last night, 89-87. I thought that was pretty cool. So I just wanted to thank every one of you all for coming here. And Erin is so right. Thinking about it in a way of lean and green in manufacturing. I worked with many different clients in the state of Rhode Island, actually in other states as well. But really, having that foundation of 5S, not just in a manufacturing facility, but in a production environment, really is where the focus it lies. And once you have that, you're really looking at, where a client wants to reduce money. But instead, as we were looking through those processes, we found, where there were environmental impacts. In fact, just recently, actually a week ago, I've been working with a company in their production facility as well as their warehouse, and they're disconnected. And I know many of you might have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 buildings, and you're spread out across Rhode Island. And that's a real issue that we all have. And their production facility, they're making a product, but yet where does their waste go? Where does their trash go? Where does their recyclable go? Well, I'll tell you where it goes. It goes on a 26-foot truck, which then goes onto a truck, and gas and diesel is very expensive. And then it goes to a warehouse. And if the Gaylords are not available, they have to drive around and locate the right Gaylord. Well, then they have to unload that cardboard from the truck and then put that into a Gaylord and then set it all up and so on and so forth. So they do that every week. And as we got talking, I said, well, why don't we, stop the intersection, of removing your wrist from your arm per se. And as an outsider looking in, I said, why couldn't we have a recyclable bin here let's keep this product rolling, and we'll recycle the dumpster, at the end of the day. And we do this every other week. The recyclable truck comes. And so we're actually doing that right now. But that was all birthed out of looking at a 5S process, and we were actually looking at their bagging process. So again, it could be a huge environmental impact. They're actually going to be making money because they were having to pay for someone to take it away. Now they're going to be recycling it, and it's turned into a program. So I just wanted to start out with, there really are some benefits of going lean and green in manufacturing. So our agenda for today is that you would please put your chat, your comments, questions at any time. And as they come up and Aaron, sort of shoots them out to me, I would love to answer them. But we have quite a bit of slides. We're going to fit this in a tight dress today. And so we'll just move along through this quickly. So as we look at why we want to go lean and green, I want to use a Socratic method on you. And Socrates was killed. So please don't think I'm being pretentious at all. But I'm going to answer your questions through asking you questions. So if you're writing this down, write this down. If you're not writing it down, write this down. So what is environmental waste? Why identify environmental waste in processes? How to recognize environmental waste? Where to look for environmental waste? And how to measure environmental impacts of processes, where to find environmentally preferable process options. So when you write those things down, the first thing I am asking you to do in your mind is why? Why is this necessary? Why is it necessary? And as we answer that, we'll always ask the question, and this is where really it happened with Shigeo Shingo as he worked for Taiichi Ohno, not in just job methods, but this is where the 5 whys came into existence. You're not going to get to your answer in the first why. Really think about if you have children, or if you have a crazy neighbor, or so on and so forth. Why, Daddy? Why? Why do we do it this way? And I'm challenging you, those of you who are, you're owners of companies, you're continuous improvement managers, you're responsible for asking why. Be childish again, and really ask why. Don't let them squirm out of this. Ask them why that 5 times. And once you get a real solid answer of why, that's when we'll move into well, what if we stop doing it? We're going to weigh and decide. Should we continue doing this? When do we do this, right? So we want to eliminate or keep. That's really where we flow into the what answer. What is this important? What is its importancy? And if I eliminated it, what would benefit, right? So we always want to start with why and then move to the what. So then as we move into, what is the business case? So if your company is already involved in rapid improvement, right? Why not look at all sources? So we're just saying, instead of, I'm not implying that you have blinders on, but I'm saying today, you spent time with me on St. Paddy's Day, which I'm honored. And I really want to say, why don't we slow down so that we can hurry up in spring as it officially kicks off on March 20th. So sometimes the production processes or process steps have large equipment and or other physical or environmental regulatory constraints that make them very difficult or costly to move. You know that if you have a metrology lab, just having that CMM there, you had to do all kinds of prep work just to have your measurement systems there. So typically This could happen in painting, metal finishing processes. So change to these processes can also require approval or permits. But any company can become more effective and more environmentally thoughtful through lean. And that's why I'm a part of this. So environmental personnel can help identify environmentally friendly process alternatives. And believe me, we don't have enough time to talk about the projects that I've been involved with, but safety and environmental, the EHS managers, quality managers, continuous improvement managers, we all have the same common goal, and it is to eliminate waste. Even those who are in Six Sigma, our waste then would be focused on variation, which we could easily talk about environmental impacts of not following regulations or having variation in your products or in your processes. I apologize. So so-called hidden environmental waste is buried in overhead and facility support costs. So that's really why we want to focus on reducing cost and risk. Risks typically are not considered. Impacts throughout the product life cycle. So we were doing this original product cycle. This is how we designed it. All of you who are process engineers, and you all know that there's 3 types of processes. The one that was originally designed, the one that's actually happening now, and the one that actually should be through regulatory, through lean, through Six Sigma, through the quality regulations. So the business case for lean and green, we want to deliver what customers and employees want. I'm going to say that again. We really do want to deliver what the customers and employees want. So lower process and product environmental impact may create a significant competitive advantage if no sacrifice in time, quality, or cost. By doing this, we could attract new customers, like what we had talked about. Those of you who jumped on when we were talking to Don and Charlie. It could also improve the work environment for employees. That's where I get impassioned by, is where I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we can lower costs, we can improve the process, we can do things in a more meaningful, environmentally pleasant way, but my people are also going to improve by having this in processes that is improved. So improving that work environment for the employees is really what I love to talk about, because you're going to have a higher retention and so on and so forth. So we also want to attract tomorrow's employees. 70% of millennials say that they will only work for companies with strong sustainability commitments. And, I agree with that. So as they're asking questions, this could also be a part of the onboarding process. And you're going to really enjoy, as we talk about a segue in to the 8 waste. I can't have a session with talking about the 8 deadly waste and how to find them, but they are deadly. And I will say this with all companies, I've just added a new nomenclature. Lean is in inches and in seconds. Lean is in inches and in seconds. But those who are EH&S, those are who are in quality. And now I'm going to talk about sales. I've just added this lately to how I've been talking about lean within the past month. And it's really resonated with me because I've been working with very small food manufacturers. Lean is not only in inches and in seconds, but it is in pennies. I don't even want to talk about gas prices. I don't want to talk about all those types of things. in this setting, but I will tell you that we should be thinking about our cost as it impacts our environment and what it is that we could do that with our new employees and the questions that they might have that are near and dear to their heart. So, we have the 8 waste. It's an acronym. We talk about it. You could look it up. We here at Polaris MEP and our national network, there's 50 of us. At minimum, some states have 3. There's even one in Puerto Rico. We're a part of the National Institute of Standards and Technology. So we are a national network, and we all talk about it in a calibrated way. The 8 wastes of lean are described by downtime. It represents a word. And so as we go through these next slides, the 8 deadly wastes, well, what are the environmental impacts? So as we look with defects, we just get so passionate about that should have never happened. We produced a product that did not meet the customer's need or the customer's specification. So what happened was, in one bullet point, was we used more space that was required for rework and repair. We needed that space to be using it for shipping, to be using it to make the next product. But instead, we stopped that next product and we had to fix this, what we would call rework or repair. And you're using that labor, you're using those raw materials, you're using that sandpaper. You could be using that solvent that you should have been using for the next product. Overproduction, again, is where you make more than what is required. You make it faster than the next process can handle, or you make it faster than what the next process can actually process. So again, more raw materials consumed in making those unneeded products. And that, again, has an environmental impact. When it comes with aluminum, it could be your plastic. You only had so much of that plastic, and now it takes so much to fill that barrel up. And once you inject it or extrude it, you can't get that back. And you all know that regrind or whatever costs you more money. It costs you more time as you're doing those extra processes. I did talk about waiting, but as it comes to an environmental impact, you're wasting the energy from heating, cooling, and lighting during production downtime. Again, you all might say, but Nathan, I was using so much of X and this, and so we'll get into that later about even looking at your lighting as it comes to a waste walk. Again, so we'll talk about transportation and motion and its environmental impact. Could be emissions from transport. And I did talk to you guys, I thought that was pretty impactful to me, is because the production manager, the vice president of operations that I was talking about, as soon as I said, well, what do you do? When do you do it? When it comes to the cardboard? And they said, well, what did they, they called it a shuttle. 26-foot truck shuttle comes over. And I said, well, when does it come? Well, sometimes at 3:30, sometimes at 4. Here's variation for those Six Sigma nerds out there talking to myself. And we're saying, oh, well, then it goes away. Sometimes it doesn't fit on the truck. Oh, wow, because we needed to transport actual product to the warehouse. Oh, it sits in the way. Then they have to get at the beginning of the day. Then we spend more of our people's time. And so again, that is that transportation of motion waste. Whereas if we had a recyclable green bin at this dock, we could, at the end of the day, be doing that and not even having to use the gas in the shuttle. We could have a more scheduled time for shuttles. Maybe shuttles could come 3 times a week instead of every day. So I hope you guys are tracking with me. Inventory, more packaging to store work in process. Again, that's a huge environmental impact. It could also be, why don't we look at, and I don't want to get into the nitty and gritty or granular, but our most popular box is a J12 or a J15, but we use a J8, a J9, a J11. Well, why don't we just eliminate those, create a standard, and from this point forward, say we always use a J15 for this condition and X amount of peanuts or filler from this day forward. Again, excess processing, just want to talk about this. One bullet point, more parts and raw materials consumed per unit of production. So again, this is where we get very intimate with our customers and our employees. What do we actually put in this box? Why don't we go and date it again? Are we putting extra stickers? Are those stickers still required? Are we putting packets that could be attached as a PDF, and upon receipt of our product, what we were putting in the box, they could just open as a link in a cloud or something like that. So again, let's look at, I love this slide. It's called Waste Visibilities, Waste Walks. So there we are, we're all there together. All of you are mentally there with me. We're looking at a sideways or 90-degree turned triangle, and we're gonna walk through this process. So now that we have an understanding of the environmental impact of each of the 8 ways, how do we find them? Don, you asked such great questions. So how do we make the waste visible? So please type ideas into the chat or raise your hand to speak. So has anyone ever heard of a waste walk? I would call that a GENBA or GENBA, G-E-N-B-A, or G-E-M as in Mary, B as in boy, A as in Arthur. So GENBA is it just means where the work is being done. So, we could talk about waste walks, but, as we have our employees involved, we're looking as managers and CEOs, are things working the way they should? And again, I'm going to give this to you guys for free. Lean in 12 words is what should happen. Write this down. What should happen? And the minute we get on the floor, we could ask, what is actually happening? What is actually happening? And then I would follow on and say, please explain the gaps. So again, a waste walk is a process for looking at each category of waste: water, energy, chemicals, materials waste, solid waste, hazardous waste, air, and visual controls related to chemical handling or environmental regulations. So, for example, with energy, we'll examine how can energy use be reduced. So is equipment running, or are lights on when idle? So again, I love this one as I work with some farms, their hands are full all the time. And there was one simple solution by this farmer, and I wanted to give him a hug. They literally would walk into their barn, and the moment they walked in, a portion of the lights would come on where their water was and where the feed was. And again, we didn't really get into this until we started to talk about environmental waste, as we talked about energy and so on and so forth. So instead of them having to put things down, which is wasted motion, transportation, excess processing, opening the door, turning on the lights, so on and so forth. Just by having motion lights really helped them with not just their peace of mind, but knowing that the lights were going to shut off when they went to another area of their farm. Are there efficient light bulbs being used? So we could talk about that. Moving from floodlights, to LEDs. And again, you guys might be looking at me like I have two heads. I promise I don't. What was the process supposed to be when we designed it? What is it now? And what should it actually be? I cannot tell you all, as I walk with company owners, environmental health and safety officers, and quality officers, they will say, this is where we inspect. You inspect here? You inspect here? Who thought of this? Well, we couldn't encroach upon our production area. No, I get it. But you guys, you're putting your employees in an inspection area that has poor lighting. Who thought of this? It's a reactionary, and I'm pointing two thumbs back at myself. We react in a way to our customer, but then we put a quality area for inspection in an area where it wasn't designed to inspect. So again, can energy be saved by consolidating operations and our storage space? And I would challenge you all, can you do the inspection within the sequential processes of what the customer required? If you have to do rework, can you do it within your production space? And I know you guys might say, come on, Nathan, but I would challenge you, look at it through the eyes of lean, look at it through the eyes of variation, and put that in the production pieces' hands so that we could actually do it through task, so that everyone knows what is actually supposed to be doing. So waste visibility, I love visual controls. Anyone who's met me for 10 minutes knows I'm all about visual indicators. I just talked about it with the red flag on the mailbox. You need to have visual indicators. What should happen? You use them on your way to work today. Aaron was talking about them through chat. So we need visual signals, visual indicators, visual guarantees. So one more example that you can use on a waste walk to start small and have a big impact. And I will tell you, those of you who are into continuous improvement, a lot of the big improvements are made through asking why. You have to ask, why is it necessary? That's where we're going to find the big improvements. And then when we get to the what, the when, the how, the who, those are smaller improvements, but I'm asking you all to really be thinking with me through the rest of this, the why. Why do we do it that way? Why are we washing things that way? Why are we processing things that way? Why? Why do we do it that way? So again, let's look at there are three visual controls, if you'll bear with me. If we walk through your facility together, we could quickly spot where controls like this are missing and create an action plan. Money, time, and environment. That's really what we're trying to focus on. So waste visibility, waste walks. Let's talk about hazardous. So it's in red. Polaris MEP has created a handout that is a checklist of things to look for or consider in your waste walk. We'll send a link to that resource to anyone who fills out our event survey after this webinar. You're going to love to do that. I'm serious. Once you've made these items visible, that's when you set the metrics. So again, without standards, just to steal from Taiichi Ohno, where there are no standards, there can be no improvement. So waste visibility metrics using environmental metrics and lean efforts will allow your company to document the environmental benefits that are part of lean implementation. Again, I love the philosopher G.I. Joe who said, now I know and knowing is half the battle. It might take some things to date your environmental processes, but again, we're asking you, do it with your new employees, do it as an onboarding. Hey, what do you see? Do we use one chemical for all surfaces? Do we make our own solutions? I think that's one thing that COVID really taught us in a time of scarcity was, why couldn't we make our own? Why don't we make our own solutions of a 10%? Why do we have to spend so much money on an all-purpose cleaner that's environmental friendly when we could make our own? So again, that's just something that we would talk about. So before you all start scribbling notes like crazy, waste visibility metrics. Metrics matter to Polaris MEP. They matter to us. So we'll send a copy of this deck with all the details on waste metrics to anyone who fills out an event survey. Aaron in our marketing department will send you the link for the survey. Fill it out. Help us improve our webinars. We want to improve as well. So then we'll send you a PDF of this presentation. Now, what I'd like to talk about here, and again, there are so many slides because it's just a wealth of information, but I'm only telling you what has sort of been in my journey. So again, we want to talk about, if I could ask you all to sort of categorize, you would make a category of toxic or hazardous chemicals. You would then have a definition. You could then have a metric, and then you would have a unit. And again, it's something that you guys might already have, but I would just say, go back and look at it again, because things change from, oh my gosh, week to week, month to month, and year over year. Again, this is all in lean based on your customer demand. You might have some legacies that people couldn't get enough of. You might have some legacy products that sort of took a back seat. You might have new products that emerged as leaders that's making you more money. And I'm asking you just on this webinar, what are those top 5, and put those into categories, put them into definition, metric, and unit, and they might have changed, and it would have to do with water use. It could have to do with lights, so on and so on and so on. But that's where I would say where we could start. It could also be under energy use. But again, I would say in these 4 buckets, create a category, then have a sort of a definition that either you, corporate, or someone internally that's in agreement, this is what we want to say is our definition. This is how we would say it was a metric, and this is how we would say it as a unit. And why I'm talking, because we have a broad spectrum of people on this webinar. So those of you who might be very well versed, you might have a handbook, you might have regulatory, you might be AS 9100, you might be using ISO 14001, or you might just have a manual. It doesn't matter what level of journey you're in, but it does matter that you go back to date the process. Because as I said, your metrics will change based on your customer demand. So again, land use, materials use. Then as we look for the category under air emissions, water pollution, solid waste, what is the category? What is the definition? What is the metric? What is the unit? Again, for us, it was so costly in Indiana, to really fill up those satellite accumulation areas. And so any liquid waste that was a hazardous waste was something that was paint or solvent. But we had noticed that once something had been catalyzed, it could then be a series of minutes or hours where that catalyzed product would then turn into a solid waste. And a solid waste was way more cost effective for us to then have solid waste as it could go out and it wasn't hazardous, whereas our liquid waste, as in paint that was mixed or so on and so forth, was highly expensive. But then this moves into our Segway. We really understood that as we would have so on and so forth from red spot or BASF or Roman Haas paint, if we segregated those paint waste that were hazardous but were not catalyzed, they actually could create what we called a primer color. It was not used as a primer, but it was used as a base coat that typically came out as a darker gray. And we could actually then catalyze it based on like a 4-to-1 ratio. So I want to move into reducing waste. The waste walks we just talked about are a great first step in finding the waste. Those of you who all know me and my character, as my background is lean, you can do nothing. I'm going to say that one more time. You can do nothing in creating standards throughout direct observation. So we're always looking at a first step through direct observation. Let's look at the lighting. Do we have any lights that are out? Where does our water go? So on and so forth. So again, you must do it through direct observation, looking at the strong agreement through connections and flow. So then it's time to use one or more proven lean techniques to find the waste and get to your goals. So let's look at here. We really want to look at waste visibility. I apologize. Hang on, give me 1 second.
Nathan's finding a visibility in his office.
Yes.
Excellent. Excellent. Before we go on to process mapping, because I know the next part is going to be kind of quick as we go through some of these techniques. Charlie Havens did have a quick question about the waste walk. How often do you think they should be completed?
Wow, that's an excellent. So Charlie, just like in any pilot that someone would do, one, it would basically be determined on what you uncover in that first waste walk. So for some of you might be looking in office processes. So you'll want to be looking at how many times do we fill up these waste baskets? So again, that really is, I'm not trying to be Socratic here, but once you decide who the stakeholders and shareholders would be, basically you want to say, where do we want to start? So that's actually where I would actually take a step back, Charlie, and say, what is going to be in your waste walk? How encompassing are you going to be? Get a strong agreement on where you want to start the waste walk and where you would end it. And then once you sort of compile that, any person that's related to that process should be involved in that waste walk. And they should also be understanding on what is it that we want to be observing. So again, I wanted to say, what are you going to be looking at? Are you going to be looking at paper, cardboard, lighting, oh my gosh, water?
Yes. So all of those different possibilities that we identified on the waste walk, you kind of have to take your cue after the first one and from the people involved on how frequently it's needed to do another walk.
Yes, that's correct, because you don't really know until you get agreement on the start and the stop.
Yep.
How large this waste walk is going to be, because you should also be understanding how long did the waste walk take actually?
Yeah.
But did we find? And then you go back and say, well, what should have happened? Well, what actually happened? And what is it that we want to reduce? Does that make sense, Charlie and Aaron?
It does to me. Hopefully it does to Charlie. If we've got more questions, please put them in chat. We're going to have Nathan keep going with ways of reducing, like lean techniques you can use to fight that waste. And Absolutely. I'll keep popping those things up from chat as we go along. Thanks.
Yeah, and Charlie, that was an excellent question. I love that question. And it sort of was a great segue into process mapping, because this is kind of what we were just talking about. So when it comes to process mapping, we regularly here at Polaris MEP, we help clients with process mapping. So it improves the results of waste reduction efforts. Has anyone ever created a process flow map? And again, you guys are saying, Nathan, are you kidding me? We are a continuous improvement process manager. And I don't mean that in a negative connotation at all. A lot of times, I'm pointing two thumbs back at myself. We ask others underneath us to do that. But when we are really dating a process or a passionate, Charlie, I'm serious. I'm so encouraged by your question. I want to change my area. And the best way that you can change is by modeling this behavior. And again, so where there's a process that you are in control of, I'm asking you, why don't you process map one of these areas? And again, so I'm saying, let's go all the way back to the basics. Why don't I create a process flow map to reduce energy, reduce water waste, reduce cardboard or paper waste, reduce plastic waste? Again, use the chat, say yes or no. So process flow maps are really, they provide the structure for how you seek data, how you turn data into applicable, understandable information, how you use it to make conclusions. It builds understanding of costs associated with processes and steps. It enables assignment of cost to activities, feeding prioritized continuous improvement, and it provides a visual document that can be shared by a team to facilitate improvements. Again, you guys, as you create these process maps, you could just say, you know what I find interesting, Don? I don't like what we're doing here. We'll just put one red sticky note, rewrite that sticky note and put that there. It's a visual indicator to say, hey, I'm going to focus on, how we reduce water in our washing. You know what? I just don't like it that when we cycle it, I don't know the last time that we looked at the machine when we do parts washing. Should we actually do an automatic 20? Have we looked at the amount that we're putting into this? And have we looked at our PSI? Have we looked at the aeration? Have we looked at our time? Is our timing still calibrated? So again, put a red sticky note where it's just something that might be a thought of a point to ponder. So also let's look here. As waste visibility process mapping, I'll just talk about, it's a non-product output. We create this amount of scrap. Yeah, we typically have 10%. Is 10% high or is it low? Are we creating this 10% month over month based on our equipment output performance? So if we have a piece of old equipment, if we did an improvement in our blades or in our winding, would that drop our waste, our scrap to 8%? So again, I'm asking you as just one bullet point, what are we doing in scrap? And I've had many conversations on scrap output, and that's why I talked about that one. Let's look at a process map example. This one is very near and dear to my heart, and I kind of talked about it. Number one, select a target process and determine map perspective and boundaries. Collect information. Draw the top level map and then draw more levels as needed. Verify the map of process steps with employees and revise as needed. Then fifth, I would develop a process step description and accounting sheets for process steps at the lowest level of the map. Then feed hierarchical process mapping information into improvement events. And again, you guys, I'm serious. I keep repeating this. What should happen? But you can't do that without direct observation. So I really want to talk about Charlie's point. What is that one thing that we want to explore? Then do the direct observation. Start, extrapolating this information, and then go from there. Now let's look at this next slide through DMAIC, right? So again, I have talked about Six Sigma. In Lean, there are 8 waste categories. We talked about it. In Six Sigma, there is variation, controlled, anything that we do, or uncontrolled. It's coming into our plant, into our department, into our cell, into our office. So we want to have structured problem solving. So some of you may recognize the DMAIC approach. Don't get Six Sigma on me here, all right? Bear with me. So it is a good tool. We don't have to have an elaborate $1 million project. Bear with me. It is a beautiful tool. I love this tool. But again, if we were looking at it in an environmental lean and green for St. Patty, we want to reduce the chance paint, solvent, or other chemicals that expire before they can be used. Again, it could be DMAIC, or, oh my gosh, there was the inventory. It could have too much, or you can have not enough inventory. And by having too much inventory, now you're getting into expiry dates. Make defects less likely, so less energy and materials are wasted. Avoid productivity losses from injuries and occupational health hazards by providing clean and accident-free work areas. You all know that. We're talking about lean here. A clean environment is one that is safer to work in and has more visual indicators. It's not going to be in a place where you actually don't see where the waste is being created. And I'm literally talking about the environmental waste. Why is that satellite area 50 feet from where we actually do most of our production? Meet or exceed your company's environmental performance and waste reduction goals. Training team members in the DMAIC framework can have a big impact on a company. My fellow Polaris MEP project manager, Annie Unger, we have been working on a project together, but when she was teaching this on an on-site of the manufacturer in the fall, we were measuring the outcomes, but anecdotally, the client has seen more improvement solutions generated with greater waste reduction across the board. Again, because we went to the area, the Gemba, and did a direct observation. And we're going to see so many things as we define, we measure, we analyze, we improve, and we control. Now, look at this. I love this. This is just a beautiful thing to me as we talk about waste reduction in 5S. Another one of my favorite lean tools for going green. And another chance for you to tell me in chat, how many of you currently use 5S practices at your facility? And has your team been trained to follow 5S? Type in yes or no in the chat. And again, we could talk about sort, and we'll move through that slide as well. Those who have gone through this, we're going to identify environmental issues during the sort process. We then go through the 2 types of targets that should be identified, the physical area, yellow tagging environmental hazards, chemicals, other hazardous materials, and environmental waste. And then as we talk about the yellow tagged areas, that's where we would say, okay, well, we want to identify and address the root causes, so on and so forth. So the waste reduction in 5S would be only once the first pillar sort has cleared the work of unneeded areas, then you would go to step 2. Step 2 is set in order as you document the new procedural standards. So job cycle charts, visual cues, checklist. And we had said, once you fill out that survey, we want you to get a checklist that would help you start on your journey. Waste reductions would then go into shine and standardize, but move into sustain. So finally, sustain is the hardest one, but without the sustain pillar, the achievements of the other pillars will not last long. Because once it's in writing, that's really where we're saying, oh, this is actually what should happen through agreement, but what is actually happening is not leading to what we agreed upon, which we would then say, well, what can we identify through 5S or the demand process, and so on and so forth. So here are the strategies for success. A 5S inspection and audit questions. You would want to confirm 5S as a pilot that's properly implemented. And we also want to have some sustain for maximum gains. Then when we go to ISO 14001, 2015 in the EMS, I know the name of this webinar is Lean and Green, but Lean actually fits really well with ISO because the Lean tools, like the ones we just reviewed, provide the process improvements required by ISO. So how many of you all are ISO certified? Could you raise your hand or, click on that chat and let Aaron and Casey know. So how many are familiar with ISO 14001, 2015? Well, those of you who are not familiar, it is the standard for environmental management systems, hence EMS. So getting your ISO 14001 certification, which proves you've got a system in place to reduce environmental waste and risk, helps in other ways. Customers may require it. And again, if your customer doesn't require it, that might be something that you want to think about. Also, having the certification may give you an edge over competitors when going after new business. You'll look better and more credible. Waste reduction. Let's talk about the recap of strategies. So what we've talked about so far to go lean and green, which I love being lean and I love being green, if you haven't already could tell, is that we want to include environmental waste in lean training efforts. We do everything under the arch of safety. We would never do an improvement based on something that wasn't safe for the customer or for the employees. Secondly, we're always doing our improvement under the arch of quality. We would never do something where it doesn't meet the engineering standard, it doesn't meet the quality standard. That would be ridiculous. And now let's think about this. We would not want to do an environmental impact or improvement based upon something that completely disregards reducing our environmental footprint. So again, we're going to do those impacts under the efforts and training needs of safety, quality, and lean. why don't you add environmental metrics to your lean metrics as a way to make your Gemba walks more robust? And thirdly, make environmental waste visible. Have a waste walk, have a process map, and simple to eliminate. And bullet points to 4 and 5 are very important. Show management commitment and support, and recognize reward and success. So again, there are proven ways for sustaining lean and green. You have to have commitment and you have to have support. So again, having the resources, tools, and incentives for employees, accountability to meet goals and objectives, rewards and recognition. We want to make sure that we recognize that we do have environmental gains, or maybe let's go back and talk about those if we haven't been. All hands assembly, company newsletter, $1 per idea. Again, I'm just giving some ways for you to be thinking outside of the point or outside of the way that you currently do. And at this point, I'm going to open the room to you all's questions.
Thank you, Nathan. That was really great. And so it's really interesting, kind of, you started out this, you said that, going lean and green is something that involves and also benefits every single section of a company, right?
Absolutely.
So I think it's interesting that we landed on this as the last slide, because the question that I had gotten in the DM was like, okay, how do I incentivize every member of my team to think it's my job to be looking for wastes, especially environmental waste? Did you have an idea that you thought was a good one for incentivizing every member of the team to be looking for environmental waste?
Oh my gosh, you guys.
A big, hard question, I know, but you've got to have a little story for that, Nathan.
No, I do. Oh my God. No, so we were, one way to incentivize, we went very quickly over there was a slide that had an SOP on it, if you will. And so we're really wanting to understand, so when I am at X, when I am at machine 23, I should have content that tells me, what am I actually doing? I should have a sequence of events. And if I follow these steps, I'm going to have safety, I'm going to have quality. And at that point, I would be looking at, are there ways that we could be talking about environmental impacts in that sequence of event in the standard operating procedures? And then I would also say there's a certain timing that's involved, and then you have an expected outcome. So one, if you could put the environmental metrics and goals within an employee's SOPs, standards, that is one way to address it. I will say that while we were trying to uncover scratches on a specific part for Toyota, we uncovered every leaf in molding, in the racking, in the robot, in the elevator, on the suction cups that the robot was using, in the mold. We had several different molds, but 2 were really good. So we had uncovered by using the DMAIC process, and we just couldn't find the scratch. So we started looking at other ways, and eventually, to Aaron's point, we investigated keeping parts, and we found that there was a scratch on parts after plating.
Oh.
I swear to you, it looked like a scratch, but under further review after months, it was an actual hit. When I say hit, I mean a hit, like a baseball hit.
Yeah.
Actually called a hit in tank. And what would happen was, as the bars were loaded, the robot would take and dip these specific parts in nickel, bright nickel, and so on and so forth. And what happened was the PVC pipe that would feed the chemical into these deep plating tanks had come apart. It had corroded, the L-clip, and it was just enough so that when the tank would go into the bath, on its exit, the PVC pipe would nudge a specific part on the right side. On the second area, there was 4 part locations, and it would look like a scratch. And so again, there is a huge environmental impact, but when people weren't saying this is where it happens all the time, we were looking at scratches everywhere in the company when it was actually from a PVC pipe that had come from an L-clip that had been broken because we didn't look at our stairs corroding, are the clips corroding?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we have a lean environmental waste walk to make sure is everything happening the way it should happen? So I'm going to leave that.
Interesting. Gosh. Well, you know, what I'm really also getting from this, Nathan, is that every company will have a different goal or a situation.
Yes.
But these techniques are the ones that are the standard proven ones for surfacing the waste, for getting everybody involved in coming up with ways to reduce the waste. And that you've said it a couple of times, if you start that pilot, right? Like kind of to Charlie's point, like don't start with waste everywhere, start here, get the process down, get the training down, get the method down. Then if you start where you're most concerned about that environmental impact of maybe a chemical or material, or you're most concerned about the scrap that you're having and that impact on everything, then you'll be able to uncover the waste, you'll be able to reduce the waste, and you'll be able to be lean and green where it benefits you in lots of places.
Yes, awesome. Guys, we'd be remiss. I'm pushing on you guys, involve your accounting departments as well. I mean, you might be spending a lot of money and they're questioning it. Have them involved. They're passionate as well. So have them involved, a part of the investigative work, so that we could actually go to an area where, man, we need to really improve this area. I hope that also helps as well.
It does. I know we've run a little over time. Nathan's going to be on for a few more moments if people have any questions, but I want to thank everybody for joining us today for St. Patrick's Day. Please go have a green beer or other drink on me. And if you do have some questions, please stay, but otherwise we thank you. And please let us know how Nathan and our other project managers can come in and help you apply some of these lean techniques to help you reach your green goals. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you, everyone. It was an honor that you all came on.
Thanks.
Absolutely. I can stop sharing the screen. This is very exciting. We know how to find you. And Don, I know, is just going to balance his green beer today with his Zeppelis tomorrow. So he's good. He's good. Great. Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing, Beth. We really appreciated hearing where you were at.
Yes. Thank you so much, everyone.
Excellent. Have a great day. Happy St. Patty's Day, my friend. We'll talk to you soon.